Hi, welcome back to the channel. My name's Rebecca, I'm 45 years old and I used to suffer from multiple sclerosis, but I no longer experience any of the symptoms since starting the carnivore diet 2 years ago. Today's video is about the intro that I just said, my intro to my videos, and it's inspired by a comment that was left on my previous video. And before I go into it, I just want to say thank you very much for the wonderful response to my last video, which was about beef versus lamb. The video performed quite well and I have gained a fair few new subscribers from it, and now I've been pushed over 8,000 subscribers, so thank you very much. Welcome if you're newly subscribed, and thank you very much for helping me to get my message out there. So the comment that was left on the previous video was that my intro is confusing because it implies that the carnivore diet immediately fixed my MS, and realistically, how long did it take? So I have actually talked about this many times over on previous videos and in interviews as well, but I think it's something that bears repeating because to me it's like a crucial point about this whole journey for me, which was that yes, the carnivore diet did immediately have a noticeable effect, and within a month I had my core strength back and my energy and my memory. So I was essentially living a fully functioning life, although that was one moment in a much larger journey that started before I started the diet and has continued since I started the diet. Overcoming MS is no small thing. It was a supposedly incurable neurodegenerative condition that left me disabled, that left me out of work, isolated, and extremely ill every single day. I didn't have enough energy to get off the sofa and into the kitchen. I was on my hands and knees in the shower. I was using a wheelchair. You know, it was not a good situation. It was not an easy situation, and everyone told me was that it was going to be for the rest of my life. This was as good as it was going to be. It was only going to be getting worse from here on in. So psychologically, there was a huge burden as well. And I've never been through anything like it. And I would never claim that you could just fix it like that. I don't believe that that's possible, because the impact of a chronic illness is actually way beyond your physical symptoms. My life was razed to the ground. You know, I've had to start again from ground zero, from below ground zero, and slowly start to rebuild. And when I started the carnivore diet, I had rehabilitated to some degree already. So I'll start with that. The upward turn began for me when I discovered that my environment was part of my condition. I was very sensitive to my environment. When you have MS, you become very sensitive to your environment. So everything becomes a stressor on your body, and you register it physically that much more, to an exaggerated degree. If you know, you know. It's something that you can only know if you've experienced it. It's not just in your head, it's like literally physical symptoms. Can you hear my new cockerel? I hope you can hear him in the background. He's very happy singing away in the chicken coop. I haven't let him out yet because he's got to be in the chicken coop for a week before I can let him out. Yeah, so I had become extremely sensitive to my environment. So that included things like light sensitivity, heat sensitivity. I couldn't handle any emotional stress or like pressure or things like that. I was so fragile. I completely break under any stress, any pressure. And my body was extremely fragile and hypersensitive to things in the environment. As part of that, I discovered that I had also become sensitive to mobile phones and Wi-Fi. I've started to become more honest about this. It's something that people ridicule me for. It's what I experienced, and that's what made me decide that I had to move up a mountain to get away from the city, all the various stresses that come with living in a city. I was living in Birmingham, the second biggest city in England and my hometown. So yeah, that was when I realized that I needed to get away from England, and I needed to get away from the city. And I chose Spain because I already spoke Spanish, but I was at risk of losing my Spanish. Professionally, I used to be a translator. My PhD is in translation studies, so it meant a lot to me to keep my Spanish, not lose my Spanish. So for those reasons, a combination of reasons: sunnier country, target language, and to be able to live up a mountain off-grid. And I had to do it when I did it because of Brexit. I've covered this many times. So I moved up a mountain while I was still quite ill in order to get away from the city environment. And that did help. That did help. There's no question that that helped. I became a little bit stronger because I was walking my dogs up the mountain every day, up the mountain slopes. I was surrounded by less toxins and chemicals. You know, I was drinking spring water. I was surrounded by nature, and I was free from all these cell phone towers and pollution from cars, noise pollution, all sorts, and light pollution as well, because, you know, it was just the stars at night. So being up that mountain kind of incubated me for the 4 years I was there. And I was living in isolation, and that was, again, was a choice, because I was already isolated through my disability while living in Birmingham. So I thought, what difference does it make? I also needed to get away from the human race. I didn't feel part of the human race anymore, and I needed to reflect that in my environment and live somewhere isolated. So that was the mountain. That was the situation when I was on the mountain, and it did rehabilitate me to some extent. I was still fairly weak though. I had limited energy, and I would become very exhausted, and my memory was still very poor. For example, I still had some symptoms, and I still had a general sort of weakness and fragility about me, emotional and physical. So that was the state I was in when I started the carnivore diet. So I was some way there, but I had been disappointed, disheartened to find that just changing my environment hadn't fixed the issues. I had this wild hope that once I get up the mountain, I'll get my health back, and then maybe I'll be able to start working again and resurrect my career. And I had all my hopes invested in the mountain, and I only made some improvement. I didn't make it all the way. And it was only when I started the carnivore diet that I suddenly felt that core strength and resilience returning to my body, to my spirit, and my energy levels and my memory. All of these things just came back to me, and I felt like my old self again for the first time in nearly a decade. So yes, the carnivore diet had a very quick and very clear impact, which I had tried a different diet before, specifically meant for MS, and it hadn't had any discernible impact on me, positive or negative. It was a near vegan diet, whole food vegan diet, but that included fish. And it hadn't helped. Whereas the carnivore diet, within a month, everything had changed, and noticeable to other people as well. But as I've explained many, many times, that was only the beginning of the journey of rebuilding my life. And that journey has played out in real time on my channel, because I started my channel when I started the diet, or at least it did exist, but it was like I had like 11 subscribers until I started the diet and spontaneously decided to vlog it. And then my numbers started to grow. So my channel has grown with my return to health. I would say that moving to the mountain put me at ground zero. I was below ground zero. Climbing up that mountain put me at ground zero. And then I had some further work to do, because getting my health back revealed some of the problems that I had additionally to my symptoms, which had come about because of my illness. So those things are addiction and poor relationships. So the addiction was to a plant, which I won't name because I get in trouble when I name it on YouTube, that you smoke medicinally for MS. It's a well-known substance. It's controversial in some places, completely normalized in other places. And anyway, it was a big part of my life for many years. I stopped taking MS medication like a good year before I moved to the mountain, and actually that was part of rehabilitating myself. That removed a level of trauma that wasn't helping my condition, wasn't helping my symptoms, and only causing me a lot of distress, because it was an injectable, a daily injectable that was very painful. So I stopped the medication, but I continued to use this substance. And when I moved up the mountain, I was still using it heavily. And I stand by it to this day, because it was a coping mechanism which got me through, both emotionally and physically. And when you're in an ill body, it's very different to when you're in a healthy body. What happened was, I got my health back on the carnivore diet, and suddenly I was in a healthy body, and now it was only holding me back. And I was still doing it out of habit rather than out of need. And I realized quite early on, I'm going to have to think about coming off this substance. And it was a difficult prospect. You know, I didn't like the thought, because I was quite attached to the stuff. I'm very used to it. I had the habit. I was addicted. But eventually I was like, I was stuck in a very deep depression, and that was to do with the poor relationships. So in particular, my ex-partner, who was actually covertly abusive. Yeah, stuff that is not even worth thinking about, let alone talking about on my channel. But I have talked about it in previous videos. It was horrendous, and it was an abusive situation, and I still struggle with it to this day. It completely wrecked my life on the mountain, and my life in Asturias, where I live. I live in Asturias in northern Spain, and it was really, really sad, because it overshadowed my return to health. And it meant that the whole first year that I was on YouTube, I was in this situation and struggling with this situation behind the scenes. And sometimes I spoke about it, but most of the time I was just behind the scenes dealing with this very, very abusive situation. And that was a situation I got myself into before I started the diet, when I was still very vulnerable. And when I first started the diet, I didn't yet believe that I was strong enough to be on my own again. The thing I feared most was going back to being alone again, the way I had been before I started the diet, because I'd been alone in a way which I will never be able to describe. I didn't feel part of the human race, and I didn't feel able to live independently. But I was living alone up a mountain in a foreign country, and it was a terrifying kind of aloneness. And the pandemic happened during that time, so yeah, I guess the pandemic didn't really make much difference. I was isolated anyway. Yeah, so it's difficult to talk about all of this. This is the part I find most difficult to talk about. And this is why at times I've put out videos that have been more negative in tone, which I made a conscious decision that I would share my healing journey, warts and all. And I have done that. You guys have seen the difference in me, 2 years down the line from when I started the diet, having extracted myself from those very bad relationships and moved back to Asturias, because I had to move away. I had to get away. So I went away for a year, and now I've come back because it does feel like home. And I do have friends here. So I came back, although I'm not on the mountain anymore. But yeah, I have a lot to process, a lot to pick through about what's happened in the past 5 years that I've been in Spain on this healing journey. And a lot of it happened after I started the diet, because my life was in such a mess because of the illness. So if you would ask me how long it's taken me to heal, I would say it's taken me a good 2 years to heal, because here I am now, visibly much, much better in many different respects. I would still say I have further to go before I could call myself healed. So a healing journey can last a lifetime. And it's never going to be a quick fix. Nothing's ever going to be a quick fix when you've been through something like multiple sclerosis or another serious illness or serious trauma of any kind. A healing process is never going to be a quick fix. However, it is true that the carnivore diet made an immediate difference in my physical state and in my resilience, in my emotional resilience. It is what has carried me through these extremely difficult times, living in Spain on my own, trying to rebuild my life. So yeah, it's not been an easy journey, and it's a journey that continues. And so no, it has not been a quick fix. The carnivore diet can sort your health out, and that puts you in a position to be able to start rebuilding your life. The carnivore diet is the bottom line, because you need your health before you can hope to heal. You need your physical health, you need your mental health before you can hope to heal. So it's given me that, it's put me in a position where I can heal. But it hasn't been the thing that's fixed everything. There are many, many different aspects to getting back into a place of strength and wellness. Many different levels that have to be tended to, and time that needs to go by before you can get distance from the traumas and gain strength and trust in your own body to be able to put up boundaries and protect yourself from being an easy target. I was an easy target for many years, and I suffered the consequences. But I'm so proud of myself. You know, when I think of the things that I've overcome in the past 5 years, I've overcome an incurable neurodegenerative condition that left me disabled. It's gone. It's gone from my life. I'm okay. I've overcome addiction, and I've overcome an abusive relationship. And I am still standing. I don't always have good days, but I feel much stronger, and I look at the future, and I have plans, and I have a vision, you know, that may or may not be accomplished, but it's there. And when I was sick with MS, it wasn't. I didn't see a future at all. So yeah, it hasn't been a quick fix, but without it, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys now. So it's most definitely the most powerful element of the journey was the diet. Okay, so I think that just about covers it. So take care, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.